And to manipulate consciousness is to manipulate possibilities. And to manipulate possibilities is to manipulate power. Welcome, welcome to the show. Look like the sun is shining a little bit out there today. I don't know, we're going to be the mid 60s or what have you, as far as the weather is concerned in Cleveland. It's good to be back, y'all. Sorry for the absence last week. You know, I was out the country. Vince was doing something. So I just didn't want to put any type of program together for you guys. So we're going to make it up. This is the last weekend before the big election on Tuesday. So we're going to have some conversations around that. I'm going to get some stuff off my chest. And, you guys can always chime in on our Facebook page, 360 Info Network, and Vince Robinson's YouTube channel and my YouTube channel, Hamtonio, The Journey with Hamtonio. So tune in and and make your comments or what have you in the chat, and so we can at least try to sort this thing out and make some sense of what's going down in our country. Because I think it's some serious issues that need to be talked about, and we're going to discuss those matters and Project 2025 and things like that, and just see where we could be getting some mis and some disinformation from. In the remote studio, we got our good brother Vince. What's going on, Vince?
Well, right now we're having a few technical difficulties. It looks like we're getting feedback a little bit, and this is something that happened a few months ago. So we're gonna see what we can do to get through this. And in the meantime, I'm gonna turn things back to you, Brother Hamtonio, so we can resolve our audio issue.
All right. Sounding good. Yes, it's something that we need to talk about. It's a lot of stress. Our country seems to be divided as far as opinion is concerned. Of course, I got my opinion. I'm opinionated on these particular matters, and personally, I don't even think it should be a race as far as it's concerned. If we looked at integrity, morals, truthfulness, having some type of true concern for the people and the folks who may be considered less than you, our immigrant population, which we are all immigrants in this country, maybe except the black man because we've been here before everybody. But the point of the matter, of all the things that went down, I just seen a laundry list of some of the things that Brother 45 has done when he was in office, and it was staggering. I don't know why it hasn't been promoted before. I don't know if somebody individually put this list together, but it's staggering. And we as people are good for quickly forgetting things, forgetting the past. So we're gonna have some good conversation on that. We got one of our good brothers, Eric Johnson, that's going to be on the show with us, and we're going to discuss some of these matters and take some questions and and really look at both sides. Look at the both angles, both sides, and see where we at. And it all has to come down as black folks. How does black folks fit into this equation? As far as the election is concerned. And how do black folks fit in the equation as far as this country is concerned and moving forward? And is there any outlet or hope for us as black folks? Why are we in this position that we are in right now, and what we can do to get ourselves out of this position, or at least be on some kind of equal footing somewhere in this country, because we've been struggling with it for 400 years. And me personally, I don't think we quite got there yet. There's much work to be done. So at this point right here, we're gonna see if we can bring in our guest and brother Vince in and get this discussion started. So I don't know if we're still working with brother Johnson. You here? We all good? Okay.
Yes.
All right there. Vince, you want to bring in brother Johnson? I see. I hear that echo. Okay. Okay, my brother.
Let me
try to work.
Yeah, I'll just be transparent and let you know that we talked about doing this show and we talked about the subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that Eric is someone that has a profound interest in politics. And I noticed his post about Project 2025, and that's a clue to me that he's plugged in and tuned in. So I just wanted to get his opinion. I will welcome others to jump on this show if they would like to. You can jump in with your comments live on our Facebook and YouTube pages. So let's just start with what the expectations are. You know, it's been a really rocky road leading up until now. The race is extremely divided. We're getting polls from one side and the other side, and we really don't know who's leading. So just wanted to get a sense from Eric what he thinks is going to happen based on what he knows about how things have been unfolding. So Eric, the floor is yours. What are your thoughts?
First of all, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for having me this morning. Pleased to have a conversation about this. I think one of the problems of our community is that we talk about everything else, but what matters, and this matters. And P. Diddy doesn't matter. The Browns don't matter. This is what's essential to us going forward right now, and we really need to focus on that. I think there's just so much out there between what's happening across the world with Ukraine, with the Middle East, what's happening economically, and we've diverted from actually making this decision, because making the decision, actually voting, is the most essential thing that's going to happen in the next 72 to 96 hours. People getting out and making a decision to vote who's going to lead this country, that's what's paramount. And I hate to put it in a window, but that's all that really matters right now. That's all that really matters, because it's that close. I've been surprised by the number of people who have talked about how they were displeased with Trump for January 6th, but yet and still they're still going to vote for him. And I just don't see the logic in that. For a man who basically committed one of the highest forms of treason in history, that you feel okay with him running the country again. So, I mean, that's where I am. I'm interested to get give and take from people, but that's where I am right now. I think if people aren't going to the polls, if you're not going to vote, nothing else really matters.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you there. You know,
Right.
I
It's interesting too, Eric, when you
go ahead, my brother.
It's interesting too, Eric, when you
Hmm.
No, go ahead, Lynn. I'm still working through these issues, man. I
Okay.
don't know what's going on, but I'm getting double feedback. So
Yeah.
if you can
No problem.
continue, and I'll continue to work.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's just amazing, like I've said before, we quickly forget things, and I think that's the reason why some of the times we find ourselves in positions like this, As far as voting is concerned, what I was going to say, if it didn't matter, a group of people wouldn't work so hard to take those rights away from you and make it difficult for you to vote if it wasn't important. Going through I think around 2020 area around Georgia, you couldn't even give people water while standing there. I mean, at least they wanted to stop you from giving them water, but standing in the line, I could go back to the whole Bush situation if you really want to talk about stealing an election twice. You know what I mean? What they did in Florida. You still got over 100,000 votes they call hanging Chad in a predominantly black county in Florida, during that Bush situation. There was a whole bunch of malarkey, and he wins it by 500 some votes, and he wins the election. And some of the machines that were taken out here in Ohio, where it caused extremely long lines, that happened here up in Ohio too. I mean, so all kind of things has been going on, but we need to be more astute on history and remembering the past and the things that have happened. what has happened under the Republican regime. Always, you know, and Vince probably can testify to this as well, and yourself as well, Eric, that grant money always dry up when a Republican is in office. What? Because they're conservative. Okay, conservative. They ain't try to make money flow. And God knows we need all kind of money to flow in our urban neighborhoods here. You got a lot of people out here who have programs to try to help our children, try to help the elderly, try to help the those that was in, you know, been incarcerated to get to pull, you know, get themselves back together and into the working force and of our community. You know, it's people got great ideas. They need money to make it happen. You know, and we in our communities are infiltrated with a bunch of foreigners that is taking all our resources and cash dollars, you know. And the funny thing about that, to one extent, is that, you know, they don't give any dollars back to the community from which that they're putting all their resources for. So there's so many things that Black folks need to be doing and coming together and paying attention to what's going on. And I think that would decide, you know, alone which direction that we should be going, you know, because definitely we need to be united on our own front, you know, even if it's a third party for us is concerned. But since we're not there yet, we have to look at the situation to what, you know, with who at that point serves our best interest, you know, until we get ourselves together and lay down the law on what we need to do as a community, and not letting titles separate us. Like I'm Muslim and you know, I'm Baptist and, you know, things like that. Let's deal with the issues that you know, for the common good, for the common, you know, great good of the people. You know. So I think that's where we need to be at.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, we probably got a little late. Go ahead, Brother Johnson.
No, I was
Yeah,
say,
and I would echo your sentiments. I think one of the real issues is the level.
am
Go
I
ahead,
in?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So I just echoing what you said. I'm looking at history, and one of the things is I don't believe that our
Go ahead.
community has taken the vote as serious as we need to.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at turnout results for elections, for example, the 2016 debacle, which actually put Trump in office, Trump won Michigan by 11,000 votes. He won Wisconsin by like 20 something thousand votes, and like Pennsylvania by 40 something thousand votes. But the point was 77,000 votes changed the course of the national election. People talk about voting doesn't count. It really did. That is how Trump won. If Hillary Clinton wins those states, she's the president, and we don't even have this. We don't have this issue today. We don't have this issue today. But, you know, there were 11,000 people that didn't vote. Now, whether they were all Black, I mean, let's face it, there probably were 11,000 Black people who didn't vote. There's probably 25 or 30 or 40, maybe 100,000 white people didn't vote either. But for us, when voting is in your interest, we have to take it seriously. We have to do the best we can to muster up all the forces we can to make our impact felt.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when you look at those 3 states and you consider their population centers, Detroit, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, I mean, you can just imagine how many Black people didn't participate and what that would have done.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Yeah, we definitely see, and you talk to some of our good brothers that, you know, that may be leaning towards Trump or whatever, and at least just even having a conversation. They may not even vote for him, but they're gonna always make a comment about, well, the economy was good then, and you know, I had some money in my pocket, you know, something to that particular nature. And when you look at history, and you look at black people, and we always talk about how black people selling other black people out. You know what I mean? Looking just strictly for themselves, and don't look at things as far how is this going to affect my community. How is going to affect my people. That's coming up behind me. How does it affect it? And the point I'm saying, because you had a couple little paychecks, which he wasn't even responsible for, because this was his economy was a carryover from Obama. See, that's what I'm saying about us forgetting things. Obama handed him a great economy, had 72 so many months of continued job growth, things, and he handed this over to Trump, and he continued, because some of the things was put in place was like on autopilot and making things happen, you know what I mean? And then as far as the House is concerned, Nancy Pelosi, with them, they say, hey, we want to, do something to save this economy because of the pandemic. And so we're going to deal with this whole PPP is the rescue plan situation, and Mr. 45 put his name on the checks.
Okay. So I want to jump in. I think I've resolved the audio issues.
Okay.
And,
all right.
Yay.
I want to I'm going to use the term angel's advocate as opposed to using devil's advocate.
Okay.
But I think in certain ways we give presidents too much credit for what happens with the economy, because from my perspective, it's really more about the bankers and the corporations that are influencing the economy, and less about, so when we look back at the pandemic, for instance, and there are some who say that it was planned. They were intentional about crashing the economy so that they could do what they did, because ultimately, who got the benefit from what happened? If you go back to 2008 and you recall the influence that Larry Summers had on the economy and the decisions that were made there, they pumped the economy up with a lot of money. They rescued the banks instead of rescuing the people, and the banks got the benefit of what happened. Now, if you fast forward to 2024, we're in the exact same position. I'll give you another example. One of the issues is not really being talked about in this election, because we're talking about abortion and emotional issues. We're not talking about currency. And while we're having this conversation, the banking industry is revamping the world economy because they want to unify. They want this one world government. This is something that Bush was talking about years and years ago. The stress and the importance to them on revamping the economy is so that they can do exactly what they've been talking about. They keep talking about the middle class. And the Democrats are saying, we want to make sure that the middle class is taken care of. But behind the scenes, and really in front of everyone's eyes, you have this massive transfer of wealth taking place. You're looking at the destruction of the US dollar. There are some that say that the dollar is actually only worth 3 cents. If you go back to when they created the Federal Reserve and the dollar was worth $1, and you fast forward to 2024, the dollar ain't worth $1 anymore. It's worth 3 cents. And if they keep pumping more and more money into the economy, the more money you have in circulation, the less the dollar is worth. So we're looking at massive inflation that we've seen in the past couple of years, and there's nothing that they can do to prevent it from happening. So on the one side, you have the Democrats, and they're talking about all this money that they want to create. But at the same time, it's a bipartisan effort, because the Democrats and Republicans have to agree to raise the debt ceiling. And when they raise the debt ceiling, what do? They bring more money into the economy. When they bring more money into the economy, who does it hurt? It hurts us, the folks who aren't billionaires and trillionaires. So there's really a lot of subterfuge going on that I don't think people are completely aware of. And what you have seen is you've seen BlackRock institute an ETF, and they're buying Bitcoin They're controlling Bitcoin. And where is Bitcoin right now? It's somewhere close to $69,000 a coin. So 3-4 years ago, Larry Fink was poo-pooing cryptocurrency and blockchain. Now, all of a sudden, they're embracing it and they're buying it. And if they buy it and they hold it, then they control it. And if you don't buy it and you don't hold it, and the dollar continues to take the slide that it's taking, then we're going to be behind out in the scheme of things. So we should be talking about currency, because currency is what is used to control the world. Think about it. You've got inflation skyrocketing, but you don't have wages going up to match that. Who controls wages? If you look at the federal minimum wage, it's the federal government. Why hasn't the federal government raised the minimum wage to keep pace with inflation? They don't. They don't want to, because they want to keep people in that same place of stress, anxiety, and urgency over the fact that they can't pay their rent and they can't buy the groceries and they can't purchase the drugs that they need to stay alive. So there's a lot at stake right now. And while we're divided about these, I don't want to say trivial things, because they are important, but the most important thing for everybody is being able to put a roof over their head and to be able to put food in their stomach. And the way things are going right now, in the next few years, it's going to be really difficult to do those things unless you know how to function in this new world. And digital currency is going to be one of those things that we need to know about, and we don't know about it. How many people own Bitcoin? Lynn, do you own any Bitcoin?
Just a little.
Just a little. Eric, you got any Bitcoin?
None.
Okay, so that proves my point. If we're not investing in those things that are going to create the financial security for the wealthy, and you know, the slogan of the World Economic Forum is, you will own nothing and be happy. And if you don't think that's going to happen, it's already happening. Look at your cell phone. You don't own that cell phone. When you walk into the Verizon store, the T-Mobile store, you don't just walk in there and plunk down $1,200 or $1,500 to get that phone. They say, oh, don't worry about it. 0% interest. You can just make monthly payments on it. You know, it's just like that car. You don't own the car until you finish paying off the loan. And the car costs $30,000 or $40,000, and you got it on a 60-month or a 72-month plan. So you don't own the car and you miss a couple of payments, and guess what? Somebody shows up in your driveway with a tow truck and takes your car away. So you don't own the car, you don't own the phone, you don't own the house, because you got a 30-year mortgage on that bad boy. Miss a couple of payments, goes into foreclosure. Guess who gets the house? The bank gets the house. So they're pushing, you will own nothing and be happy, and they're implementing it right now. The software that you use on your computer to write your documents, Microsoft Word. You don't just walk in the store and say, okay, give me the software. They make you purchase it, a license, and you pay on that. You want to edit some videotape, buy Adobe Premiere, you're paying. You don't own it. So controlling this population, the world population, is a matter of controlling currency. And and the economy is the most important thing to everybody. We ain't talking about the economy. We talking about cats and dogs getting eaten in Springfield.
Well, you know what? I'll say this. That one, gone are the days of people, well, not necessarily, but people don't save cash anymore. The ability to save cash is not what it used to be. And because everything is an automatic transfer, it's the ETF. You're using the ACH. And do people really know what that is? Do people really understand touching it? You know, one of the things that I found, I'm a little bit better saving money when I touch it. I'm a little bit better at saving money when I see it. You know, I keep change, and I collect change because yeah, I'm counting it up and wrapping it up because yeah, I'm going. That's as small as it might be. I can take that to the bank and cash it in.
That's tangible.
It's tangible. I can touch it.
Mm.
When I get an electronic transfer for my job, for my wages, yeah, I get that. But then electronic transfer out to this credit card, to these utilities, to the house note. I really, the ability to choose, say, well, maybe I won't pay you. Or maybe I'll hold that this month and keep this here and, move my money around to my interest. People don't think like that. People just, they get it, then they automatically send it away. I try to discourage my wife and others from using those automatic debt pay systems because there's going to come a time where you need to make a decision about whether you're going to pay somebody or not. You're going to have to make a decision about how you want to move your money. And I always appreciate being able to do that. So your conversation about currency is valid. I just think that, that goes along with serious talk about financial literacy. But who wants you to know how to control things? Who wants you to know how to control your own wealth? People don't want you to do that. Neither party wants you to do that. People want you to be, like you said, people want you to, go along and not consider those things as being important, but they really are.
Yes. Let me jump in real quick and just point out the fact that 45 has been pro crypto. And then you've got Democrats like Elizabeth Warren and Maxine Waters and others that have been anti-crypto. Joe Biden was anti-crypto, not because he understood why cryptocurrency was so important, but because he had people telling him that this is the position that we should take. So again, I just wanted to illuminate our audience about the significance of the World Economic Forum and the impact that they've been having on the economies of different countries. So within the past few years, there was an executive order signed by President Biden. I think it was 14067, and it called for the study of cryptocurrency. Well, it was really just a formality because not long after that, they started planning a new payment system called FedNow. FedNow was enacted last July, not July 2024, but July 2023.
Yes.
And this call for the study of blockchain and whatnot by the president was just it was a prelude to the implementation of central bank digital currencies. The central bank digital currencies, as they propose them, are programmable. They have a certain level of surveillance that you don't have with the current level of currency that we have right now. So this is one of the plans that they have to control the currency. You've had Gary Gensler, who was the head of the Securities and Exchange Commission and still is. They say his days are numbered, but he was very anti-crypto. But despite that, you had a cryptocurrency called XRP declared to be a commodity and not a security. So he lost his control over that. The SEC pretty much lost the lawsuit that they filed against Ripple, the company that created XRP. And consequently, XRP is a bridge currency that's being used around the world. So before you know it, there's going to be an ETF for XRP as well. They're going to create an ETF for Ethereum. And they've already created an ETF for BlackRock. Now, BlackRock controls trillions of dollars in assets, trillions of dollars. And what you're seeing right now is an infusion of capital into the cryptocurrency markets. But again, we're oblivious to this because we've been told that they use cryptocurrency for money laundering and all these illicit things, and they're pushing you away from it. But at the same time, they're buying it all up. Why would they be buying up all this Bitcoin if it wasn't worth anything? The issue is that they are moving into a place where Bitcoin represents a store of value. Eric, you said something really interesting about cash. And while we're having these conversations, the Bank for International Settlements, and with agreement from the European Central Bank, which the BIS controls, they're saying that you should not be able to spend more than 500 or 600 euros in cash. Why? Because if the currency is digital, then they control it, not you.
Right.
If you got $20,000 and you got a friend that wants to sell you a car, you should be able to write that person a check, or you should be able to come to that person with $20,000 and say, here, and then count off stacks, right? They don't want you to do that. They don't want you to have the ability to spend cash because they want to move to a cashless society. I'm sure both of you have been out of town. You've been to restaurants and places where they won't accept your money. I was in Dallas last year. I went into a restaurant. If I didn't have a phone, I didn't eat, because you scan a QR code to get to the menu, and then you use your phone to pay the bill, and they use the pandemic to justify pushing away from cash, but the intent was just to take you out of the habit. But when you give somebody money, it retains the same value. When you give somebody $100 bill, it's $100 bill. When you make that purchase through electronic means, there's a middleman, and there's a fee associated with it. And that's one of the ways that they implement their control. So I know we're kind of belaboring the issue of currency, but I think it's really one of these important things that we need to know, and we need to bring folks into the digital age so that we can function it and be successful in navigating it. So right now, we should be buying Bitcoin, we should be buying gold and silver, and we should be looking at how we handle money, because the truth of the matter is, with inflation being what it is, we can't do the saving that you talk about, Eric. If all your money goes to the rent and the groceries and the drugs and all of that kind of stuff, and you don't have anything left over, not only are you not saving, but you're not investing. The difference between the people who have money and the people who don't is the people who don't have money look at money as something that they can use to satisfy debt. The people who have money look at money as something that they can use to grow more money. And they grow more money, and they're extremely greedy about it. And it's like there's no emotion involved in that. The landlord don't care about you when he goes up on the rent from $1,000 a month to $1,300 a month. They don't care, because they trying to pay their mortgages too.
Well, I'm concerned about, a lot of the conversation has been about the economy. And the first thing you'll hear is, either candidate will talk about how high things have gotten. And, let's remember, if the government's going to give everybody, and remember, the U.S. government gave everybody, almost everybody, $1,500 cash. They gave them cash. They gave they gave everybody a cash payment. What you did with that cash payment was completely up to you. But think about it. If everybody has the same thing, what is the value of that? What is that? That's this. Everybody has the same amount of money. How much is that $1,500 really worth? So then think about what people did with it. So a lot of people use it in, well, they say, I'm going to get a new car. I'm going to get a new TV, and they purchase things. And once again, it was basically just a transfer. It was a transfer of cash from the government to the citizen to the retail economy. There was no essence of saving. There was no interest in saving. There was no interest in wealth building. That's all it was. It was a transfer of cash from the government to the individual consumer to the retailer. And then that money went back into those said pockets. But at the end of the day, we have to consider those people who are going to be in front of us. So even if Trump is pro Bitcoin, I'm kind of scared about what he would do with it. Now, he's already proven to be unscrupulous based upon just where the government is right now and where it was while he was president. So giving him the opportunity to have policy and say and control in what happens to Bitcoin, that kind of makes me nervous. And true enough, we need to learn how to play that game. But I'm really cautious about anyone like a Donald Trump who stands in front talking about he's interested in a form of currency and he likes it, because I know that he probably already figured out a way or is in really deep to take advantage of it and take advantage of it to the detriment of others.
Yeah.
Let
Well,
me say
Eric,
one thing.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to put a twist in this conversation, and you know, it's something that I think that we need to really pay attention to, about getting to knowing that there's options, you know, because we tend to get too wrapped up into this situation. And what I mean by that, the way the colonizers have laid things out, you know, giving us the customs, the rituals, the rules of the game, and got us so, you know, attracted, and you know, just made this money so dominant in our lives that we have to have this. And then we forget where the true power lies. That's the question. What is it in the money,
Mhm.
or is it the people? The consciousness of the people. Something Dr. Amos Wilson say: change your values, and the man loses his power over you. He got you marketing. He's marketing to you, and you chasing down all his goods and services and things of that nature, and therefore he has power over you, because psychologically he got into your head and told you, you got to have this, you got to need this, you're going to do this. See, the question is, like the old saying that they used to say, a fool and money soon part.
Mm-hmm.
So if we caught up into his system, this is where I'm going with this, to his system, then you are a victim of that. But if you just elect to do something else with it, or because the power structure in any country is the labor, is the trades, is the labor that bring value. Those people that sit on and the Bilderbergs, is that they can't make that cell phone, they can't make the car, they can't make none of the stuff to make them keep their positions. It's the people, it's the labor force. So that's, you know, the psychological game that they playing for us, to keep us dangling that carrot in front of us, chasing that money, compromising all our morals for that money, and then they continue to have power over you. So our conscious minds, you know, the people are the power. As far as this global thing and research, I think they already have done it, because everything that we know as far as this country is concerned has changed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we can't put it past them sneaking a reset on us and not knowing it that it's been reset, because the wages is different, how they service you around here is different, the economy is different. You know, you know, like we always talked about, we only got 3% of the money. There's actual cash is out here. Everything that you transact right now is digital for the most part. So, you know, I think they almost pretty much snuck a reset on us already. You know what I mean? And so, and we're doing things, we operating different. And then while we focus on the Browns and things of that nature, they putting all kind of rules and legislations and laws to support this reset that's in front of us.
Yeah.
And I know you and me both have seen the one video that Dr. Whitaker sent in about what's going on with the WHO. You know, the World Health Organization, how we, you know, we still talk about this over here. They putting things in play to take government's sovereignty away. You know
in
what
silence.
I mean?
In silence.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, in silence.
Right. So you had no say in what they plan to do to you, what they want to force you to do it. And then the thing that gets me is the complicity of governments that consider themselves to be sovereign, but will turn their power over to someone and let them tell them what they have to do. That that makes
Hey,
absolutely
Vince, and who's the second biggest donor of the World Health Organization? Brother Gates.
I was getting ready to say BGZ, and you said it before I could get it out of my mouth. But yeah, it really is. It is a serious concern. I want to shift a little bit because we invoked Project 2025, and I think there are some things that we need to be aware of with respect to that. First of all, there's nothing new about it. You know, I learned within the past week that President Reagan wanted to do away with the Department of Education, so it's not a new idea. You know, and to your point, Brother Hamtonio, about the significance of the people, we talk about labor and the fact that things can't get done unless there's manpower or woman power. And Eric, I'm sure you are probably cognizant of the fact of the influence of the right Christian faction who are so entrenched in a patriarchal religious system that they actually want to take away the power of a woman to vote. Thinking about the fact that over half of the population in this country is women. There are more females than there are males. And I just don't see women being willing to give up their ability
Not at all
to vote. It's nonsensical to think that a man would say that, okay, you know, you can't speak, I speak for you. You don't have a voice. This is 2024. You know, and we look at things in the cyclical way of being given and then taken away, given and then taken away. You know, go back to the Reconstruction era of the United States. Black men got into politics when women couldn't vote. White women couldn't vote, and black men were in political office. And then they started to see what we could do when we were effective in terms of being legislators and being in government. So what did they do? Oh, they said, oh, y'all, hey, look, hold up. We got to put an end to this. And they stopped it. Now, fast forward, we have a Voting Rights Act that has to be renewed every so often. So they're in a position where they're telling you that we still have power over you. You know, let's not even start to get into the whole issue of birth certificates and the straw man and the trust that is set up for everybody, and the fact that there's a certain level of bondage that we are not even aware of because, like you said, Brother Hamtonio, we concerned about the Browns and the Cavaliers and Bronny scoring his first 2 points in Cleveland. Those things are so unimportant and important when it comes to us having an awareness of our place in the world and our place in society. You know, we've been misinformed about who and what we are and what our value is to this society. At a certain point, we have to stand up as people and say, you know, we reject this. Bring it home to Ohio. Issue 1. I haven't gone to vote yet. I will go to vote. But I've heard that issue 1 takes up a lot of real estate on that ballot. And if you don't navigate through it and get to a place where you can vote, you might skip over it. Why is it important? Because if issue 1 fails, then the Republicans keep their edge and they can carve out even more territory in the state of Ohio so that they can maintain their control. What have the Republicans done? Well, your governor has basically dismantled the State Department of Education because the school board is lined up with people that he can control. And what happens with that is that you lose the ability of local folks to advocate for students in our local school systems. You take folks like Merle Johnson out of the picture and you change the territory so that there are more white folks in that territory than black folks. So even if she could run again, or if she did decide to run again, she'd be fighting an uphill battle just because of the way we have Republicans in rural areas and we have black folks and Democrats in the urban areas. This, you know, the truth of the matter is this is war. You know, we talk about this all the time, Hamtonio. We're at war. There's a war to occupy our headspace. there's a war against our physical bodies because, you know, just sitting in this room with this router behind me means that I'm being exposed to electromagnetic.
Uh-oh. Hit your mic. You're muted.
You went out.
He muted himself. He gonna hear it. Okay.
I can get some stickers to reduce the radiation on my phone and to reduce radiation on my computer. I can get my Orgonite to do that. But the bottom line is there's always something out there to try to affect us physically, mentally, and spiritually. So we really got to soldier up, and to soldier up means that we have to be aware of what's going on around us, and we have to institute measures to deflect the things that are out there to control us. You know, again, we talk about this all the time, the impact of food, the food products they give us. The food products are part of the reason that people are depressed. You know,
but Vince, yes. What makes that problem so, and the things that they're putting on is so effective is that we first got to be aware, almost, I believe it was Dr. Henry Clark said, you got to be aware of your enemy first. If you don't think it's a problem, you know what I'm saying? And if you're not aware that somebody would purposely do something to your food to cause you to keep being addicted to it, you know, in a certain kind of way, that they developing chemicals, excitotoxins to keep you coming back and not, you know, caring about how it's affecting you physically. All the pharmaceuticals that are out there. I mean, you first have to understand that you are being attacked. That's the problem with most of us. You know, we're walking dead and don't believe that somebody would actually go out their way like that and do those things to people. You know what I mean? And I read a little bit about what the comment is, and that's where I was going with too, the workforce. That's why they're trying to get set up this whole AI situation, because they're going to discard people in a little bit. You know what I mean? And so while we got the opportunity of using a labor force to make a statement on something, we better go ahead and go about it and do it, because they're trying to remedy that point. But but coming back around is that whole piece right there. We first got to be aware. You got to be aware of who your enemy is and what your enemy is. And I think most of us is walking around and walking dead and not paying.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really an issue of profit over people, and it's been that way for a long time. I mean, if you just look at the auto industry, we had General Motors, we had Ford, you know, we had these auto companies that were making cars in America. And then at a certain point, they decided, well, if we build our cars in foreign countries, then we won't have to pay as much for the labor, getting back to the importance of labor. So when they did that, what happens to import-export? You know, America imports more than it exports. You can't be a global leader if everything that you need comes from other countries. We've seen this paradigm shift, but the corporations that decided to be in these other countries, they piling up the money. They don't care about you. Look at what happened to Detroit. You had Black people who were working in those auto factories, able to afford houses, able to afford cars. If you worked at Ford, you got the company discount. So you could ride that brand new car. Some people I know were buying a brand new car every 2 or 3 years just because of that. But what happened was they started putting up or setting up shop in other countries. And then what happened? The Black folks who used to have those jobs don't have them anymore. So when you talk about AI and robotics, well, the corporations, they understand. I don't have to pay health care for a robot. I don't have to worry about that robot saying I can't come in today because my child is sick. They're doing what makes the most sense for their bottom line without regard for the worker. Now, I've talked about this in the past, and I'll resurrect it now. If these corporations gave their employees a sense or a stake in the ownership of the company. And they gave up 1 or 2% of all those profits and turned them around and sent them into the bank accounts of the workers, everybody would be good. The worker could afford their rent, they could afford their car, they could afford the groceries and all of that, but they don't. They don't invest in the people. They invest in the business and the bottom line. And that's the reason that we're looking at, you know, all these labor issues and jobs drying up, and then on top of that you got the inflation. I mean, it really is a mess. And then the question in my mind right now, since we're talking about elections, is what impact is a president going to have on that whole dynamic? Because they're not really in charge of the economy, but they're the face of it. You can call it Bidenomics, but I guarantee you Joseph R. Biden did not sit down and write a book called Bidenomics and say, I'm going to implement this. I just want to take this real quick opportunity to let folks know that you're listening to 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE. Our guest is Eric Johnson, and I just give him credit for being an astute brother and very knowledgeable and aware about what's going on in politics. And we wanted to have him on to add his voice to our political discussion. We are streaming live to Facebook and YouTube. You can see us on our respective channels. My YouTube channel bears my name. Hamtonio's channel is The Journey with Hamtonio. So you can tune in even after this broadcast on either of YouTube channels, and you can view this broadcast in case you got with us late. Eric, we have just a few moments before we end the terrestrial radio broadcast. We will continue our discussion on YouTube and Facebook, but I just wanted to find out if there was an event or anything that you want to promote before we sign off on the radio, because I know I got a message from you about Project 2025. So
correct.
That opportunity.
Okay, the Black AF Book Club and my Facebook group called 10-4, Get the Message. We're hosting a discussion this evening on Project 2025, what it is. And we're going to be at the Third Space Action Lab on East 105 in Cleveland, Ohio, beginning at 6 p.m. So more than welcome to check in and come in and join the conversation, get some motivation, get some information, and basically discuss. Because once again, our community is not discussing what's relevant. We discuss a lot of other things, but we really don't discuss what's relevant. And sometimes we need to take a break and come together and have a discussion about what's getting ready to hit us in the face, basically. So that's what we're going to do tonight with this conversation. I hope folks get a chance to come out, check 10-4 Get the Message Facebook page, and find out what's going on.
Yes. My hat is tipped to Third Space Action Lab. You know, I participate in the intergenerational luncheons that they have. They do a lot to amplify the needs of the Black community. So I'm happy to see that you're going to be in that space tonight. And I know that it's going to be a meaningful event. Very significant dialogue takes place at Third Space Action Lab. So
yes, indeed.
I'm glad to see that you're doing that. So Brother Hamtonio, anything you want to share with the radio audience before we
well, again, all I can say is just be careful of the misinformation out there. It's a lot of IA information, having people say things and things of that nature, which is incorrect. So we really need to, get our heads into some spaces where you can get good information, like what my brother is doing today. So we need to do that, because there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just one more plug?
Yes.
When voting, make sure your ID, have a backup, your utility bill, whatever, photo ID. Be prepared. I really think that we're going to see some different kind of stuff happening at the polls. There's already been stuff out here across the country where they've been vandalizing ballot boxes, where they collect ballot boxes and so forth. So I'm expecting anything. So I just encourage people, if you're voting in person, Be ready, have all your materials. If they tell you can't vote, be prepared to demand a provisional ballot so you can at least have that on record. Because this one, Tuesday is going to be a very different day in the United States.
Yes. And I also want to put a plug in for issue 55. It's the arts and culture levy. This is not about candidacy. It's about continuing the cigarette tax that supports artists and nonprofit organizations that are involved in art and culture here in Cleveland. So vote yes. I'm saying it. Whether it's right or wrong, I'm saying it, because the artist community depends on these dollars. So give serious consideration. It's the last measure on the ballot. Vote yes on issue 55. Also, there is a school levy on the ballot. I know that the school funding model is broken, and I also know that the children are being exploited to a certain extent. But I also realize that we have a school in Cleveland called Wings Academy. And Wings Academy is giving you Afrocentric education. So we got to do what we can to support that effort. So I'm going to advocate voting yes on the school levy as well. Gentlemen, it's been a great conversation, and we will continue. Those of you who are listening to us on AM 1490, you can go to Vince Robinson's Facebook page. You can also go to my YouTube channel. You can go to Lynn Hampton's YouTube channel, The Journey with Antonio. You can continue to listen to what we're talking about. Also, just want to give big ups to our engineer, Tone Harley. Brother, you made it happen again today, and we appreciate it. So with that said, as always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make it a great day, Cleveland, and the rest of the world. Peace.
Peace, peace.
Peace, peace.
All right. So the terrestrial broadcast has ended, and I had to get that in there for issue 55. But I will also say this. We're in the midst of significant change in our community, especially when it comes to artists. Within the past year, we have seen the Transformative Art Fund come into existence. There were something like 103 proposals that were submitted by artists in our community, and there was an award of $2.9 million. Over 200 artists are going to get paid because of this effort. And this is money that came from the federal government. It was stimulus dollars. So we can see the impact of stimulus. But the main issue that I have with arts and culture funding here in Cuyahoga County is that the smallest share of it goes to artists. Within the past year, there was $500,000 that was provided for individual artists out of $10 million. And when they got down to the brass tacks, $375,000 was awarded to individual artists because the other portion of that $500,000 was eaten up by administrative costs. Mm-hmm. This represents 3.75% of that pie that's assigned to arts and culture in Cuyahoga County through the cigarette tax. I am advocating for an increase in the amount that comes to individual artists. I'm also advocating for an increase in the amount of money that goes to those 59 or so nonprofit institutions. So just keep that in mind. But it's really important. We have to find other ways to support art and culture here in Cuyahoga County, but that's what we have right now. And the best way to continue that is to vote yes on that issue. If we don't approve that measure, then the $10 million a year that we've been getting will no longer exist. And it's going to impact the individual artists and those smaller nonprofit organizations much more than it will impact the Cleveland Museum of Art and Museum of Contemporary Art, the Cleveland Orchestra, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They're going to be fine if they don't get that money. But these 59 organizations that depend on it for operating support and project expenses, they won't be able to survive, or they will be severely impacted. So this is one of those cases. If you don't smoke, you don't pay the tax. It's that simple. So again, that's my stump speech for supporting issue 55. Eric, are there any other measures on the ballot that you want to talk about?
Well, I really I've been paying attention to issue 1, and been paying attention to issue 49 and issue 55. because that's what's relevant to me. One of my bigger concerns though is that people tend not to complete their ballot. Voting down ballot for our community is really an issue, a problem. We know we vote for the president and vice president. A lot of people know we're voting for senator seats. A lot of people know we're voting for congressional seats. But then after that, the trail off on people actually completing the ballot to select judges, to select local elected officials, to make decisions on the different issues. People really fall off on that. And to your point about like how issue 1 is so wordy and takes up a lot of space, there are people who just say, oh, I ain't paying attention to that. I'm done. I did what I was supposed to do. Our community has to realize it is essential to vote from the rooter to the tutor. We got to take it all, because when we don't, there's a small minority of people who are dedicated to whatever their cause is. And sometimes that cause is not actually in the best interest of all of us. And they will get their way because they are dogmatic about completing their voting process. Our community must become much more dogmatic about completing the voting process. We have to think, go ahead.
And
I'm
judges,
sorry.
And judges on this ballot.
Yes. Yeah, we got judges on the ballot and people, well, who's that? What does it have to do with me? And you don't realize it until it comes down to the end. The whole thing about, people talking about, Trump and the Supreme Court judges. People don't pay attention to how many appellate court and district court judges he appointed as well, and how they've made these different decisions that have actually impacted far greater than actually what they did at the Supreme Court level. Because by him appointing all these lower court judges in these different districts, it allows them to stop the challenges early on. It allows them to set precedent and stop challenges to issues, and they'll never make it to the Supreme Court level. So it's just really important. People take a look at those judicial decisions and vote all the way down, not just at the top, but vote from top to bottom. And I think we would be better. I've looked at historical elections. We talk about supporting African-American candidates for judge. And what was interesting was there was a judge race, local judge race. I'm not going to say any names, but because a number of people within the city, on our side, African Americans, a lot of those districts, when I reviewed the precincts and I was looking at the vote counts, and people didn't even vote. They didn't even vote in the judicial race, and the loss to the candidate to our opposition was basically that amount, because people just did not vote. So when we talk about Black people sitting out, well, it's not just about sitting out. It's about being accountable all the way through, voting for all the issues and all the candidates, making sure you do that.
I'm going to say names, Eric. I'm going to go back to that last election where there were two candidates, a Republican and a Democrat. And I think this really illustrates the importance of knowing the candidates and doing your homework before you come to the voting booth. But I think one of the issues is illiteracy and the impact that it has on the voting process, because people, they just can't read all that language. And the language is written intentionally to be confusing. So sometimes you think you're voting yes for something and it's positive and it's not,
Right.
But I'm just going back to the election that happened that resulted in the sister who ran as a Republican against Kevin Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's what you were talking about, but I think it clearly illustrates how we injure ourselves when we don't do our homework, because you had one candidate who had absolutely no judicial experience, and then you had another person who had judicial experience and an understanding of the nuances of the Black community. But because we were uninformed in that election, we voted for him instead of voting for her. And it didn't make sense to me. I mean, this is a sister who pulled herself up proverbially by her bootstraps. She was working at the post office, and she decided that she wanted to be an attorney. She studied law. She, passed the bar, did all that, and then eventually got appointed to a judgeship. But then when it came time to run, she couldn't run against somebody who had a political machine behind them, the name recognition, and a city council presidency. And because we weren't informed, we voted for him instead of voting for her. We have to do a better job of doing that homework before we step into the ballot box. It's not uncommon for you to get a placard or something that just says vote down the ticket, but it's those same Democrat judges in Cuyahoga County that sent a higher number of young Black people to prison than any other county in the state. And we put them there because we voted for them. And we didn't understand what their positions were or what their track record was when it comes to us. They got some websites that you can go to where you can see where they went to school. You can see what organizations they participate in. There's history that you can draw conclusions from, but that means that you actually have to think, you have to analyze, you have to be critical. And that's what we have to do. We have to be critical. We have to be analytical and stop letting people think for us. That's the whole purpose of media. The media exists to control our thought, to influence our thought. That's why social media is so prevalent right now. And there's some good and some bad about social media. One of the good things about social media is that it will give you opposing views to what's on mainstream media, but that same social media also spreads misinformation, disinformation, and lies that motivate people to do the wrong thing. So again, we have to be critical and analytical. We have to think about the decisions that we make, especially when it comes to voting. So I just want to put it out there, don't be an uninformed voter. We got a few days before this election is going to take place. So those of us who still have time to think about it before we go to the voting booth, let's do some homework before we get there.
I just want to add one thing real quick here. And this is an example of us forgetting things and going along with things. Now, I'm surprised that some of the people that is talking about voting for Trump, that they call themselves activists. They're out there, when the police was abusing people, they out there marching and, clowning and, and getting on the police and Black Lives Matter and all those particular things. Now, to know a little history is to know that, as far as Black people is concerned, we have a special relationship with the police like no one other, and so the whole judicial system is something that affects our community like no other. It's very important. It's very important. So for those ones who call themselves activists in the community that may be looking at Trump, how does that play with us in the judicial system and Black folks and things like, what are his positions on that? How did that affect us? Now, if you remember, when we was having a whole lot of these issues during Obama's age and era, he pumped up the DOJ, and remember all these investigations as far as the police department were going on across the country. What did our boy do as soon as he got into office? He gutted the DOJ and he killed a lot of those investigations as far as the police is concerned. You know what I'm saying? He laughed and joked about if you're putting them in the back seat, you're putting the criminal in the back seat of the car, they bump their head. Oh, well, you're making a joke out of it. He okay with stop and frisk. He's talking about giving the police more immunity. You activist people, okay? you know. So, how does that affect our community and the police? Can you trust the police with giving them a free range with no oversight to do business? Now, you got great police out there, but you got a lot of ones whose heart is tainted,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and not working in the best interest of the people, and don't even understand the communities that they're serving, their culture and things like that. So you activist ones that are talking this stuff about. So what do you think is going to happen? During Trump's reign, you had more Karens,
Mm-hmm.
out there coming out the closet than anything. More militia, militia groups got all powerful. Like you had an uptick when Obama was in because they just couldn't stand, somebody black being in the White House. Okay. So you had more threats and more militia groups, but they got power. That was their answer for you guys voting Obama, and we gonna go to the other extreme, and so we gonna put Trump in there. Okay, and that brought out all these issues. When we really start having all these issues, let's put a time frame on that. I mean, when it just went to another level. You see, so my question in closing with that comment is that if he gets in office, how is that going to affect black folks locally there? I'm talking to these activists. You think the police is going to be more community policing friendly? Or is they going to come back out with a big stick and start beating some heads?
Well, it seems as though this is just empowerment of the slave catchers.
Yeah.
That's the reason that they exist in the first place. They exist to protect the property of the people who are running things.
Hey Vince, hold that thought.
Yeah.
Two other things I got to say that I forgot to say. And it's going along with forgetting. A lot of that anti-discrimination in schools and medical stuff, like Trump did that.
Mm-hmm.
All you want, he's for black people, he loved black people. He went right on in there and dealt with some legislation that deal with the discrimination and the DEI and affirmative action stuff. He killed that. He started that stuff. And Bush and every Republican regime, they kill what? All these environmental protection acts in order for corporations to get more money. They killed all of that. They don't care nothing about you living in the urban stuff, living next to towers, doing whatever it is, polluting the water. They're giving free reign to these corporations. This is how it affects you locally. We need to understand and we forget all these things, man.
Yeah, Eric, did you want to chime in on that?
No, the point is made. I think all politics is local, and the question is who's going to feel it.
Yeah.
So I had a friend of mine who basically said, and he said, well, I can't vote for Kamala. She doesn't know what she's doing. I'm vote for Trump, and I don't really care who wins. My family's still going to be okay. And to my response is, well, my family's not, especially if Trump wins.
Yeah.
So I think, we have to be forthrightly honest about what we think is going to happen, about what we know is going to come from a Donald Trump presidency. I don't think, everyone else can be ambiguous about that. I mean, the other groups, the other minority groups, women, the other splinter groups, but we as the African American Black community, we have to know that once he wins, it's open season.
To roll back everything.
If you didn't experience that in his first presidency, it's going to be full tilt this time. It's going to be something like you. And wait a minute, we talk about how bad it was in the 50s and 60s, but now there's more
to lose.
There's more to lose, and there's more ways they can impact you. You don't have what you used to have. A black hotel, you used to have a black bank. in spite of all that stuff we talked about happening back then, there were institutions and facilities that Black people had. And unfortunately, we've lost a lot of those. So now to go back to this time without any of those said key infrastructure aspects to our community, we're going to be in a lot of trouble.
But Eric, this is 1 second. This is how they win. When you just said that issue about your friend say, well, it's not going to affect me. That's how they win. That's how they win.
Right.
With us just thinking about ourselves and individuals. You see what I'm saying? That's how they always won. We thinking about ourselves. We don't think like other cultural groups, the greater good for the greater number. What's the greater good for the greater number? You know what I mean? And we don't look at things. That's why it's preached culture so much and so often and repeatedly, because that's the biggest hang up that why we're losing. Your culture gives you a guideline on how you get along with each other. What the purpose of man, woman, child, what's your duties and roles in society, how you iron out problems and issues. It's a culture. And by we having this bastard culture we got, or as Dr. Amos Wilson, this reactionary culture, this is how they're able to do what they do, manipulate and separate. A quick analogy with far as when you see them little war pictures on TV. What is the first strategy they try to do? Control the narrative and control the communication lines where the enemy can't talk to each other. And that's individualizing people, putting them on their own little island so they can be manipulated. So when this brother sit up and say, I'm gonna be good and I ain't worried about everybody else, that's how they win with that type of thinking.
I just want to amplify the point that Eric was making about voting being important on the local level. And I think we touched on that when we talked about the judges, but it's across the board. It's really important for us to be plugged in. And I think that's one of the reasons why they want to dissuade us from voting, period. That's why there's so much voter suppression going on, because it's not just about what happens on the federal level. It's also about what happens on the local level. And that's why we should be engaged in the process. So I just wanted to toss that in there. There are some other things going on that I think that we should be aware of. And a lot of it just has to do with how much we're involved in the process. What roles do we play in the process? We were going to have Ken Dowell on earlier today, but he got tied up with a Zoom. But there was an effort to engage 1,000 brothers in Cleveland or in the Cleveland area in an effort to get folks mobilized and get engaged in the process. One thing that I'm really passionate about, and I think you spoke to it, Brother Lynn, in terms of the engagement of our culture. We're a really creative people, and we faced adversity since day one, and we found ways to deal with things. And I think we rely on others to do for us what we should be doing for ourselves. I'll use education as an example of that. We go to these schools and we get indoctrination. And we get indoctrination that really doesn't provide us with a sense of identity, a sense of culture, a sense of who we are genetically, historically. We don't get a lot of information about our ancestors, those who came before us. They conveniently leave that information out of the books. So we don't have any way of discovering how great, how mighty, how intelligent, how blessed we are with what we have been given in terms of our design. And that's by that. It's not an accident. So why would we expect to go to someone's school where they give us a certain sense of empowerment? They don't. Those who have the money, they might be able to get it. But those who don't, they get what the public provides. And what the public provides is vastly handicapping us. So we have to depend on ourselves more than we do right now. The way they keep us from making progress is they keep us divided. We're divided in terms of religion. We're divided in terms of ideology. We don't come together and present a unified effort to create change in our society. So, and I know illiteracy is an issue, but, there are ways that you can get around that thanks to technology. One of the ways that you can deal with those issues is through animation. So people who may not be able to read, they can watch something that's going to give them information. And again, just going back to social media, it's all about the algorithms. 5 or 6 months ago, I was getting a whole lot of stuff about Black history. And of course, when you click on that, it's going to bring you back to that. So they're going to keep giving you stuff that you're interested in. And somehow I know it comes back to money, but there are a lot of content creators out there that are giving you information about who we are as a people here in America and around the world. So if you have an interest in knowing about who you are, if you have an interest in knowing about your past, if you have an interest in knowing about genomics and genealogy and all those kinds of things, that information is out there. We live in an age of information. So if you pursue that information, it can be something to help edify you. There are advantages, for instance, in owning a business, but how many people know how to leverage opportunity, how to leverage profitability and all those other things by owning a business? We don't. They don't give us that literacy in school, and it's by design. So we can blame others for our deficiencies, or we can make a decision to say, well, what I don't have, I can find out and I can get it. We do something every year. Last week of December, we have Kwanzaa. And not everybody's engaged in Kwanzaa, but there are some of us who are. And we talk about the 7 principles, and we know what the 7 principles are. But after that second week of January, we went back to business as usual. We forgot all about Kujichagulia. We forgot all about Nia. We forgot about all these things. It's like we put them back to bed, and then we come back the next year, and then we engage or re-engage in conversations about it. We got to be about those 7 principles 24/7, 365. That's really what it has to be in order for us to get to the next place. Now, I think that, despite all the plans that they have to quote unquote put us in our place, and keep the foot on the neck and all of that, we are who we are. We are the strongest of the strong. We are the ones who survived the Middle Passage and built this country. So I don't think that we're just going to roll over and play dead, but I do think that we have to be intentional about addressing the issues that we're facing, and not only think about it, we have to be about it. We have to do things. And when you look around this community, you can see people who are doing things to make a difference. There are people in this community who are growing food, and we're having conversations about food shortages and what's going on at the ports around the country and all these other kinds of things. But you have people who are growing food right here. We got Wings Academy in this community, somebody with an Afrocentric curriculum. We have these things going on, but we don't have an awareness of it. And I think we have to ramp up our awareness of the things that people are doing to make a difference. And then we have to support these efforts so that they are effective. And these things are happening against the narrative of we don't have anything, we ain't doing anything, we ain't about nothing. If you continue to believe that, then you're part of the problem, because the question really becomes, what are you doing, Eric?
Well, I offer that one, we were a far better connected community 20 years ago than we are today. I think, like yesterday or Thursday, I went to an event where they were trying to drum up support for Sherrod Brown at a Diamond Cuts barbershop, and I attended. And, a lot of political types there, yeah. But, there was some conversation about, people coming out. Why didn't they come out? And in my mind, I'm thinking about, if this had been like 20 years ago and that was happening, people, the corner would have been packed. And we didn't, and wait a minute, we're talking about without cell phones, without email. It would just been word of mouth, the phone call. So there was the while technology has been a blessing, it's also been a curse because we've become more divergent about what we're going to take and what we're going to accept, what we're going to listen to, what we're going to pay attention to. And it really diverts some of our attention. I think we have a very, very segmented community. Even within our own African American community, I think we're very segmented, whether it be from professionalism, activism, different organizations, faith beliefs, and so forth. There's a lot of segmentation, and we don't really, like you said to your point about getting together, unity, of more or less alignment. More for me when I look at it, we don't do that too well. And one of the things I was telling somebody saying, well, it was nice to share everyone to come down and, 4 days before the election and get to talk to people. But if this had been a plan, if this had been a schedule, if we had been building this back in the summer, or, when this first started off at the beginning of the year, we probably would see more fruit of the labor. But, people don't really get into, we're not driven to these things. There are people, and you guys been out here for a while, it takes some doing to get people to participate.
Absolutely.
And I think what we really haven't had is and now people disagree with me when I say this, but truthfully, back in the day, under Lou Stokes, every Monday night at Vale's on the Circle, you knew there was going to be a 21st District or 11th District caucus meeting. And you were going, if you wanted to find out what was going on in Black Cleveland, that's where you needed to be every Monday. And they did it with almost our feel unless it was like a holiday. But we don't have that kind of connect anymore. We don't have those grassroots anymore. And I tell people, one of the greatest disassemblies of the grassroots in Cleveland was the election of Obama. People take issue with me when I say that, but Obama came in with outside support and help and built his campaign and penetrated our community deeply with outsiders. If you remember, they have busloads of college kids, white college kids coming in the community, walking up and down and off Kinsman, handing out flyers and so forth, spending the night at the church where they was feeding them food and all kind of stuff. And this mechanization took away the existing mechanization of the grassroots that was here. And then couple that with the fact that there's no more 11th District caucus, and that, when you talk about it, in these campaign events, where was the headquarters? When Stokes ran and when Stephanie Tubbs Jones ran, they had a headquarter office that was a central hub for anything that dealt with elections in our community, because people go there to get signs, people go there to get information. They had, people get paid to go out and drop off flyers, answer phones. These kind of things happen, but they were mechanized by a grassroots and by leadership that was there. And we're not seeing that now. Where do you go to get a Harris Wall sign? Who do you have to track down? Who do you go to get a Sherrod Brown sign? Where do you go to volunteer? Well, I'm not the online guy. I don't do online. I'm somebody in the community. I'm just like I'm in my house. I'm cutting grass, and I say I want a yard sign. Who do I call? Who's asking me? In my community, I live in Cleveland. I have not had a candidate. I have not had anyone knock on my door asking me about voting. I just thought about that. I have not had anyone this season ask me about whether it be senatorial, presidential, or local elected official, I have had no one knock on my door or pass me out a flyer. Now, maybe it's because the solicitation laws are more impactful now. But in the old days, somebody would have knocked on your door and said, "This is a candidate running for office. I'm supporting so and so. Would you do this?" We don't have that. None of that's taking place. So I'm a little concerned. And get off my soapbox. I'm sorry.
To your point, I attended a Sherrod Brown event last Saturday in Cleveland Heights, and the room was predominantly of the European persuasion, and the communities that they were going out into were probably Cleveland Heights. Those same people might have an issue knocking on doors in Glenville. So that could be it. But I want to come back to the energy and the momentum that we had that you spoke of with the 21st Congressional District and the 11th District. And who can forget, and probably a lot, but who can forget the meetings that used to happen at Lancers all the time? When folks like Arnold Pinckney and others used to have their meetings and their conversations, and then there was action that happened as a result of that. I think one of the issues is that we haven't had the level of succession planning that we needed to have. You know, when we had the George Forbeses and the Arnold Pinckneys and the other political juggernauts, there should have been given some thought to grooming someone to assume those roles and responsibilities so that the mission can continue. So part of it is a failure of our leadership. But I think the other thing is just that there are so many things competing for our mind space now. You know, the average person spends about 5 hours a day in screen time. Whether it's, you know, watching television, whether it's looking at your phone, whether it's looking at a computer screen. We spend a lot of time, and the whole time that we're doing that, we're taking in information. And we don't take the time to disconnect from those things and give thoughts to our thoughts without the influence of those other things that are trying to make us think a certain way or see things a certain way or whatever the case might be. So I think we have to take ownership of our role in mobilizing folks and getting out and doing things and getting the job done. But, you know, I don't want to put all the blame on Whitey, because we can blame them for all of our problems, but there are things that we need to take on ourselves. Lynn?
Yeah, here's the thing. I'm gonna go back to one of the principles that you mentioned when you was talking about Kwanzaa, and that principle is NIA. When we talk about purpose, and that's contributing to some of our major issues. Purpose. What we have to train ourselves, and it comes right back to culture, common culture, you know, common unity, common thought processes, common worldview. It comes back to that, because we're at this point right now that when we do something, it has to have a purpose. A purpose on why we're doing it. And we lost, even like, you know, if you remember, like what Tom Joyner would have said, party with a purpose. You got to have a purpose if you're doing anything. You know what I mean? I far too much. We just out there just doing some, you know, like you say, individually, it's just hanging. We just doing this, we just doing that. But most of our things that we do, especially these days, must be done with a intent, with a purpose of an outcome that is in the best interest of your community, the Black community, and Black people in general. If it's not working like that, that's how most people think. If it's not working in those regards, we're wasting our time. And to me, a lot of us get too wrapped up into the system to where all you're doing is creating a black white man. You know what I'm saying? If you, of course, we got to learn how to manipulate and maneuver through this system. But if you got that purpose on why you're doing it, you know, and then you could take this system that has not been working in our best interest and work it to where it works in our best interest, because you know the outlying purpose. I'm getting this money right now, this, that, and other. I got to play the game to get it like this, but I'm gonna take this money and we're gonna do something with it over here. You got to have the white consciousness, which is based in the white culture, because you understand it, the greater good for the greater number is for your people. Like Dr. Claude Anderson said, quit looking at color as race as a color. Look at it as a competition. The Asians are trying to get as much as they can for them. The Hispanics is trying to get as much. The Europeans is trying to get as much. See, it brings forth a team effort. That's what I'm kind of disregarding this a little bit of saying community, because we don't wear out the word our community, you know what I'm saying? Let's get into nation building. That's what Dr. Amos Wilson said. If your leaders are not doing things and not talking about nation building, they're wasting your time. They're wasting your time. All those infrastructures that is necessary to promote a community, if you're not trying to build those things, then how can you, Vince, you kind of touched on it a little bit and when we talk about Wings Academy, your children is your prime, your prize. You know what I'm saying? On who you give your children to. And we're around here because we're so complacent. We want to be accepted so much by the system and the people. How you give your jewels over to the same people that oppress you? It's almost like what Dr. Whitaker said about leaving the country. How you keep giving your money to the same people that institutionalized you and oppress you. So I'm gonna take my money and these little coins is gonna be less than what you're able to work with to suppress me with. Because I'm taking it outside of the system, so you can't use it again to suppress me. You see, so that's what I'm saying. Doing things with a purpose and an understanding on why you're doing those things. That's why we got to get here with our people. We got to get them to understand. Go ahead, Vince.
I just want to jump in and amplify what you just said, because when you talk about the children is a succession planning.
Yes.
You empower them by preparing them to take the reins when you hand them off. To talk about purpose, and you kind of referenced Ubuntu, that we exist for the benefit of others. So there is that understanding of purpose that you talked about, but there's also the purpose that you have as an individual, as a being in this universe, and being aware of what that purpose is and connecting it to the purpose that you spoke of. And I think one of the shortcomings that we have in life is that many of us don't wake up to what our purpose is. So when we don't know what our purpose is, then we serve someone else's purpose. So when you talk about labor, that's serving someone else's purpose. You're trading your time for money, and it's whatever they're willing to give you. Whether it's $15 an hour, you standing there at the cash register at Aldi, or sitting behind the cash register and the transactions, or you're the assistant manager and you're making $25.50 an hour. You're still only getting what they're willing to give you. They don't raise us up to think about being entrepreneurs where we have all these advantages if you work the system right. Again, on social media and bombarded with ads all day, it's people who understand the system and are willing to teach you, but they're going to charge you for that information so that you can get that thing done. But the idea remains that if you have this knowledge, then you can get over. But they don't raise us up to be entrepreneurs. They raise us up to be people who will go to a job and trade our time for money and not make enough to set aside some money that we can invest and grow. Because what they do is they have multiple income streams, and they got money making money so that when they go to sleep at night, when they wake up the next day, they have more money than they had when they closed their eyes.
That's true. That's true.
So this is the thinking that we have to have. We have to transform ourselves from being debtors or being people who are in debt to people. Go ahead.
Go ahead, man. I'll go just say something. Just give us a little caveat right here. Just a little thing. How much? Okay. How can I word this? How much, as far as your debts is concerned, how much of that debt you owe a black person? Huh? How much of that debt you owe a black person? Or is it all farmed out to somebody else?
Well, you know what? You say that, and I'm thinking, the question is, go to move from that point, because from that question is, what do I purchase that would draw me into debt? What can I purchase in my community, that I have to buy on a term basis? And that's a scarier question, because now it's like, do you have a car? Can you buy a car from someone? You got African American auto dealership, or better yet, do you have an African American savings and loan that you can get a loan from to purchase the vehicle? Because that's who you're really paying anyway. Do you have a fiscal institution that you can purchase a home from? So the first big barrier is an institution, an African American institution that will allow you to get debt. And there aren't any. Well, there's some. Take that back. There are some, but at what point do we, as a community, and you hit this earlier when we were talking about, the wealth building and so forth. How do we take that step in alignment? Now, we all not going to get rich at the same time. We're all not going to get wealth at the same time. But, one of the questions I asked, I was at a forum last week, and I asked a young lady, she brought up a good, I said, so what can African Americans do, regardless of what happens on Tuesday? What should our community do? In spite of whatever happens, Trump wins, Harris wins, what do we need to do? What kind of action can we take? And she was quite serious, and she said we all need to go out and make sure that we have self-defense. We need to make sure that we have the ability to defend ourselves. Be that as a, license, permits to carry, whatever, weaponization, so forth. But she said we need to be able to defend ourselves. And then when you bring up this point economically, I think we all see, how do we figure out a way to generate revenue for ourselves? Are we taking these, do you have an electronic, do you have a stock fund where you can actually buy stocks? You can buy Bitcoin. Do you have the ability to do that? As African Americans, we should work on getting people to be able to defend themselves and to be able to finance themselves. You start taking, it's baby steps. And it's not like saying you go out here and buy an armory. And we're not saying you need to go out here and invest $1 million. What we're saying is, what does it look like? We've had a lot of these conversations about purchasing insurance and cash value insurance policies. What does that look like if all of a sudden, after Tuesday, 100,000 Black people in this community or across the state decided they was going to buy insurance from this Black insurance company, life insurance policies from this Black insurance company firm? What does that look like? What does it look like when we go to an African American auto dealer and buy cars? What does it look like when we go, and just put ourselves in this place to make these things happen? And that's what I be that's what I would be like to see happen.
Go ahead.
Let me just jump in real quick, because brother Hamtono, you've been to Africa. I've been to Africa, and I'm telling you, when I left the airport in Accra, I saw entrepreneurism in action. And the thing about it is, they don't have welfare over there, so it ain't about sitting at home, fat, dumb, and happy, waiting for a check on the first of the month. These folks are out in the street selling stuff because they understand, if I don't do this, I don't eat. You know, but when you see the energy of that, when you go to the marketplace and you see all these people selling stuff, there's a lady selling fish, there's somebody selling bananas, there's somebody selling watermelons. They are engaged in commerce because it's a way to take care of themselves. They don't have a college degree, Eric. They don't have an MBA, but they understand, if I have this good that somebody needs, I can fulfill that need, I can get paid for it. And guess what? That money is circulating in that community. Because when you look around, everybody around you is Black. Everybody around you is African, you know? So this is who we are. And I think that's one of the reasons why they go through such lengths to disconnect us from that, so that we don't understand that when we depend on each other, everybody can survive. And not just survive, it has to be about thriving, because the mind state that we're in right now, it's a survival mentality. And it's by intention, it's by design that we keep the survival mentality, because while we worry about our next meal or about making that next rent payment, they can keep us engaged in such a level of stress and anxiety that we're not formulating plans and strategies to implement ways that we can acquire wealth, we can acquire land, and we can start building, that we can start businesses that will enable everybody to have a job if they can't be an entrepreneur, and we can keep the money in our community. We have this conversation all the time, Hamtonio, about circulating dollars in our community. And the issue with us is, as soon as we get the money, we go out and buy the Air Jordans. You know, we buy these things to improve our self-esteem, because the value that we represent to others is what we're wearing. And it's not about what's on your body, it's about what's in your head. Because you can walk around in jeans and a t-shirt and be the most brilliant person in the room, nobody would know. You know, but that's the issue. We have such low self-esteem that we need those kinds of things to boost our confidence about ourselves, you know. So if for instance, you're a young man, you know, you don't want to step on the basketball court with tennis shoes that you got from Payless Shoes. You get dogged out, you know. So it really is about us having a greater awareness of who we are, and also doing the kinds of things that we can do to support each other. And again, we exist for the benefit of others. So when we're doing what we're supposed to do in life, it's going to take care of us. You know, that's just the way things are designed. I think one of the big things is that we have to shift the paradigm from the idea of lack to the idea of abundance, because we keep talking about the deficits. We keep talking about what we don't have. We have to talk about what we do have, and then we have to leverage what we do have to benefit our success in life. We have to change this narrative of victimhood. You know, I was thinking about this earlier in our conversation, and I saw some footage of comments that were made at a Republican rally. It was a whole lot of different people in addition to 45. And the things that they were saying about Black people and Latino people, like they called Puerto Rico a pile of garbage in the middle of the ocean. And you're a Latino person standing in that room or sitting in that room, how do you feel? If you're a Black person and the person is talking about an S-hole country,
Africa, Haitian,
and you're sitting in that room, and you still align with this person's thought process, and he's just told you to your face that you ain't SHIT. I know we can cuss, but I can't do it because my mama might watch this.
Okay.
But you understand what I'm saying. You know, that's why, you know,
it's them today. It's you tomorrow. It's them today.
Right.
Him export people, you know, it's them today. Then when they get tired, they already tired of us. So you next in line. So you looking at those people talking about immigrants. But yeah, it's them today. But it may be you tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? Well, we're gonna all these inner city people, we're gonna do this and do that with. What's stopping them from going to their next run? And
I just think back to there used to be a special on HBO called Cosmic Slop. And they did a take from Derek Bell's book, Faces at the Bottom of the Whale. And they took a story out of there called Space Traders. And they did a special on. I don't know. It's on YouTube. If you get a chance, I encourage people to view it. Because if truth is stranger than fiction, then it surely is now. But, you know, that whole conversation about, you know, being able to value your own. And that whole conversation in Space Traders about how, you know, the value of Black people versus the rest of the country. And nobody really paid. They say, well, it's just the Black folks. They only want the Black people. They don't want anybody else. They just want the Black people. And the story's premise is like just really, really, it plays well in today's society. You can just see how it runs to today's society with the way people think about us. Because for all your people, all those people who claim that, you know, that they're not racist and they're not, you know, they don't care, you know, they're not trying to harm Black people or anything like that. If you align with Donald Trump, I can't help but think that somewhere in your psyche, there's a tendency to say that Black people don't matter. That people other than white people don't matter. So I'm not really comfortable where, you know, that whole conference at the Madison Square Garden the other week, it was just a litany of, you know, white people telling the rest of the country that you don't count and you'll never be with us. And so if you agree with that, whether you know, because, you know, silence is not golden, is how you really feel. And that's the big thing. If you don't say anything, it's not like it's not like it's gonna happen. You're gonna all of a sudden jump on our side or anything. And you let it happen. You let these things happen. You let these feelings become pervasive in our community. So you can't tell me, you know, as good as and as nice as you might be, and as well-meaning as you might be, if you cannot consciously object to Donald Trump being the leader of this country by voting against him, I think you might have a racist psyche, a racist validation in your mental well-being.
You know, yeah, and just switching a little bit because of what I wanted to say, and back to us as people, you know, and what can we do for ourselves? You know, when Vince was talking about the finance, the economics, and things like that, and we're just being consumers. Let me ask the question to both of you guys: how far would have been able to achieve in your personal life and individual life if you came on the scene working and you didn't have to pay rent in your adult life? I mean, let's say up until you got out of school or college, up until about 35, where you was working a decent job and you didn't have to pay rent. How far could you have went? What are some things that you could have done and saved up for and things of that nature? So here's the challenge, far as us economically, far as Black folks are concerned. Let's see if we can get a house that we can pay off and hand over to our children so they can start some wealth building. Because now that kid can start its journey not having to pay rent for a number of years or using their house as leverage to do something, start a business or whatever. That's something simple to a certain degree, if we put our mind to it, that we can do as people. As some people, as Dr. Amos Wilson say, if you don't charge our kids for something that you talked about, the Brother Johnson, if we don't charge our kids to fix our problems of the day, then you just perpetuating the cycle. We got to break the cycle some kind of way. Just like we gonna have to break the cycle of Christmas. Oh Lord, I don't say a bad word. Lord, they're gonna jump on me now. Because I hear people always talk about, well, you had it, and I'm not gonna deny that from. I know it ain't for real. I know it's just this, that, and other. Then when are you gonna start? When you gonna start? And changing the madness and giving all your money. People gonna kill themselves in Black Friday events. People gonna kill themselves. Going out there and giving the same system their money, like what I talked about first, the deny you jobs, the vote on crazy issues, to put PAC money together to go against you, and your best interest is in your community, not give you all grant monies or monies that you might need, none of that kind of stuff. So I charge us, let's start building wealth with us and stop being a consumer and do things with a purpose. Let's see if we can start off by leaving our kids a house or something that's free and clear that they can build some wealth on. And then we have to start training our own kid. Even if it's Saturday Sunday school, we're going to have to drill down and get into the consciousness of our children and our baby and teaching them who they are, their purpose, and their role that they play in the community.
Okay, so you asked the question, and I want to try to address the question because I think it's definitely a valid thing to think about. And you can look at this community or this city or this area, I'll say, and see the evidence of it. What happened in some places is people understood the value of having that property and having families within that property. So for instance, in Cleveland Heights, you can go to a certain area in that city and you'll discover that there were homes that were designed to accommodate not one family, not two family, but three families. So in the basement, even though it's illegal, there would be a kitchen, there would be a bedroom, and there would be a family living down there. You got another family living on the first floor and another family living on the second floor. You got duplexes. The design of the consumerism that you referenced, Antonio, is this idea that instead of all of these families living in the same building, you could sell everybody their own washer and dryer. You could sell everybody their own car. You could sell everybody their own refrigerator and all these multiple things instead of people using the same things. That's kind of where we went wrong. And then on top of that, we have this idea, you 18, you got to get out the house. So if you get kicked out the house at 18, then you don't get the advantage of not having to pay rent for all that time. So you could take some of that money that you were earning and invest it in things that would grow. So, I mean, I know it's kind of I don't know, a stigma or whatever you want to use to describe it, but 35 years old and still living at your mama's house is a problem in some situations. But if you do it with a different mindset, or you have that situation where you have a house that's big enough, mom and dad on the second floor, and you in the basement with your wife or whatever, and you got the living space and everybody's comfortable and you ain't dealing with mold and mildew and stuff like that, then you could, when you get to 35, then you've got enough resources to create your own situation, and then you can repeat that process and you see empowerment. If you look at what happened with Chinese people when they came into this country, there was a reason that they had restaurants, and that's how they were able to amass the capital that they needed to be successful. So it worked for them.
Mm-hmm.
But what we want to do, and Americans, the best consumers in America,
it's us.
So you know, there has to be a paradigm shift in the way we think about things. And I think with inflation happening the way it's happening right now, it's forcing folks to have to make different choices. Because you can't afford all that stuff. You want to wear red bottom shoes. You want to walk around with that Louis Vuitton purse. You know, I like the quote that comes from George Fraser, and I'm not quoting him exactly, but he talked about somebody walking around with a $5,000 purse and $5 in it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the mentality that we have. But wouldn't it make more sense to take that $5,000 and invest in something that will turn that $5,000 into $25,000 and then get the purse? I don't know. I mean, you got to do what makes sense, and we don't always do that. You know, so we just need to change the way we think about money and our approach to money. And it's really about putting ourselves in a position where our money works for us instead of us working for our money.
Yeah.
Brothers, we're at the 2-hour mark, and I know you've got an event to do this evening. I don't want to keep us on here too much longer, but I do want to give you another opportunity to talk about what's going to happen at Third Space Action Lab this evening, and encourage those of you who are watching or those who may see this broadcast after the fact to consider stopping by 1464 East 105th Street, the Madison, which that's another story, Eric. You know, the Madison was designed, or that building was designed by Robert Madison.
Yes, indeed.
And the reason that they had to do that building is because they wouldn't let us in other buildings in this city. We had to do for ourselves. So the spirit of that building is extremely important. We had doctors, we had attorneys, dentists, we had professional people in that building. And this is something that we did for ourselves. And that, again, hats off to Third Space Action Lab for having that space. And it's owned by Famicos. You know, that's another aspect to the story, but just the idea that it was something that we created for ourselves. Don't think that we can't do the things that we need to do to be successful.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you think about Robert Madison, you know, the Martin Luther King shopping plaza down there on Wade Park. You know, that was one of the first live work designs in the country. Because they had the retail on the bottom and the apartments on the top. But yeah, tonight's discussion really trying to alert people to this whole conversation about Project 2025. There's a lot to it, but to at least have some conversation about the finer points that are looking to be, you know, the whole conversation about government workforce, the whole conversation about any Department of Education. You're talking about stuff that's going to be, I mean, you talk about impactful. Imagine a number of the African Americans that are in the government workforce being told that you're going to be let go. What that looks like, the kind of the cataclysmic domino effect of that conversation and what it's going to do to us. The Department of Education, you're going to end that. You know, first of all, not to mention the employment piece, but then the funding. Where does all that money go? And what happens to education? I mean, the parameters around the outcomes of 2025, just for what they could be to us as a community immediately, could be quite devastating. So if people have insights, feel free to share. I encourage you to, you know, take a look at, you know, if you get a chance, look up some of the conversations about 2025 prior to. But by all means, looking forward to having a good conversation, and do some elevating of the mind tonight a little bit, and get pumped up to go vote on Tuesday. So maybe a little informal pep rally to get to Tuesday.
Lynn, was there something that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah. I just basically said, it just gives you something to think about. Some people say, well, they're not gonna, they ain't gonna pass 2025. The laws was made to be broken.
Yes.
Okay? And he can challenge, by him having people in these courts, they can challenge every little thing now at this particular point and wind up massaging that stuff. And Vince, we talked about this. Some parts of that was implemented way back in Nixon time. So they've been chipping at it all along. This is not a new thing right here, what they've been trying to do. So my point is, for these activists and these people that's talking about this situation, even if they can't do it, it's just, for me, the purpose. I mean, just for them even putting a manual together like that, lets you know what their intent is, for somebody to even be thinking about something like this.
Exactly.
It's telling you something of that you need to be paying attention to, in that. Any black person that look on that, I mean, again, and I'm gonna say this in closing, this is my analogy. If you guys been listening to me any length of time, I understand where America is. I think America is going to get its just due. You can't keep going doing so much ugly and nothing happened to it. It's going to have its day. You know what I mean? And so somebody is going to have to, you're going to have to pay. So America's got its agenda, like we talked about IA and doing stuff and eliminating people and the digital currency. America is going to do whatever it's going to do, regardless on who's ever in office. I get that. I understand it. But the way I break it down is like this. And Vince said, you said we could cuss on it.
Yeah, you can.
I just say messing with you. I look at it like this. You want a slow road to hell or a fast road to hell? I just want the slow road. That's all. I'm taking the slow road to hell, because America's going to do what it's going to do, and it's going to affect all of us and everybody. But from what I know, as far as the Democratic Party is concerned, and far as what has trickled down better for my people, what group of people? So all your Social Securities, your welfares, your school vouchers, your Pell Grants, and all those things that we have benefited from a people, grants, environmental protection stuff, all came from the Democratic Party. So I'll take the slow road to hell instead of the fast road to hell. That's all I'm saying.
I get you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's obvious that there's a certain level of divergence when it comes to the right versus the left. The Democrats have taken us for granted, for so long. And there's this idea that we should have some kind of leverage in exchange for our support for the party, but then there's the reality of the things that you mentioned that Democrats have accomplished, versus what the Republicans, and I do see a stark contrast when it comes to these two different entities. You go to the Republican National Convention, you see, a black dot here and there, but you don't see a lot of diversity. You go to the Democrat convention and we there, so at least there's a certain, there's a certain level of representation within that paradigm. So it is important to know, but it's also important to take that historic look. I mean, we've always, well, not all of us, but some of us have glamorized Joe Biden, even though he's a non-issue right now. But then when we look at his past, we look at certain positions that he took and certain things that he was involved in. And you have to be aware of those kinds of things in order to make an informed decision. And while I value the things that Democrats are bringing to the table, I'm also aware of other things that they're doing that are hindrances. But the real question becomes, and we've spoken to this already, what are we going to do no matter who gets in? Because the bottom line is, it doesn't matter who's in office, racism will still be racism. It's institutionalized. There are some systems that are broken and need to be replaced. So we have to think of doing things a different way instead of doing what we've done before and thinking we can put a Band-Aid on something that requires surgery.
Stay engaged. Like Eric said before, when it's all over, everybody going back to doing business as usual. You got to stay engaged throughout the process, you know, not just doing election time.
Yes. Well, I'm going to end things on a happy note because I want to thank Brother Eric for what he does on a Facebook page that he created that relates to golf. And I'm telling you, I haven't seen a lot because I haven't been on there, but the few things that I've seen have been things that have been extremely helpful in terms of the game. And knowing all the things that you put out there, I have to wonder how much your game has improved since you were getting the benefit of so much valuable instruction on that level.
Absolutely not at all. Not at all. Yeah. I'm glad you enjoy it.
I enjoyed it. I really value that. And although I don't play as much golf as I used to, I do plan to implement some of the things that I'm learning on that platform. So I thank you for doing that. And again, I hope that you have success in the event that you do at Third Space Action Lab tonight. And keep doing what you do, brother. I appreciate you being on with us today, you sharing your thoughts with us. And I hope that folks heard something that might motivate them to do something special on Tuesday. But absolutely, you know, there are some folks who say that it doesn't matter if you vote or not, you know. Yeah, I get it, you know, but if you have to accept decisions that are made by people that you don't care for, you have to accept part of the blame for them being there because you could have done something to prevent them from being in office.
Exactly.
So, yeah, so that's what it comes down to. I'm hopeful that we'll know who the next person in the White House will be on November 6th. I don't have a lot of confidence that that's going to happen just based on everything that we've gotten in media, social media, and mainstream media, but we shall see. But again, no matter who that person is, we're going to have to do what we're going to have to do to be good regardless. And that's the bottom line. So with that, thanks for joining us, Eric.
All right, my brother. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
What time at the 1464 East 105th Street tonight?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Okay. Be there, be square. With all that said, as always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your best day. Peace, y'all.
Peace.
Peace.